What's the worst or best thing you've ever seen happen at a wedding? My buddy married a woman who was estranged from most of her family save her 90-plus-year-old grandpa. They were so close and he was in poor health that the wedding was held in grandpa's backyard so he could be there. 36 hours before the wedding he had a massive heart attack and was rushed to the ER. They were recommending hospice palliative care and bride-to-be was going to call off the wedding. Grandpa insisted it go on even with him not being at his own house because people were flying from all over the country. All during intermittent bouts of consciousness. Fast forward to the wedding and this determined granddad broke out of the hospital. Just unhooked all his equipment for stuff and took a cab to his own house hours before the wedding. The family that was invited was incredibly upset but knew how close he was to the bride and he ended up staying through the whole ceremony without issue. Slept in his bed and then returned to the hospital the next day. Think he also drank a few beers. Absolute legend of a man. My ex-husband and I were at his cousin's wedding. Another cousin of his, 25M, was a groomsman. He was a giant guy, 6 feet 4 inches, roughly 400 pounds, and the life of the party. Picking kids up and throwing them in the air, holding the groom on his shoulders, dancing like a maniac. Having a blast. I went to the bathroom and came back to the reception to the music cut, and everyone circled around the dance floor just panicked. There was Matt. Completely purplish red and on the floor while a guest performed CPR and others were calling 911, taking his pulse, screaming. He passed away from a massive heart attack. Pronounced dead on the scene. The reception ended right then and there, obviously. The bride and groom were supposed to leave for their honeymoon to Hawaii that same evening. They ended up not going and instead they stayed home to attend the funeral where the groom was a pallbearer. With all due respect, there are worse ways to spend your last day on earth. Sounds like he died like he lived, having a blast. I agree. He was surrounded by family and friends who loved him. I felt terrible for his parents who were there. Also, for the bride and groom. Matt and Alec, groom, were the same age, raised together and best friends. The happiest day of Alec's life was simultaneously the worst. Every anniversary was a reminder of their love but also of the scariest, saddest moment they've ever experienced. Such a mix of emotion. The minister was doing their speech during the ceremony and asked, rhetorically, "What is love? Baby, don't hurt me," was muttered by several groomsmen, who all started cracking up. When my uncle got married, the best man dropped the ring. In the dead silence of the church you could hear it ting 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 as it bounced along the floor, followed by one of the groomsmen stage whispering, "Jesus Christ," loud enough for everyone to hear. The pastor didn't even bat an eye, just said, "The ring has already been blessed, thank you," and carried on. My best friend's biological father, who took off when she was very young, threw a fit and made everyone from his family leave, because my best friend did her father-daughter dance with her stepdad, who has raised her in her father's absence. They rented a huge manor. Music? Not a problem. Spotify. Premium, you ask? Nope. With the commercials. This couple asked everyone to request a song on their RSVPs and they made a playlist. It was all random songs in random order. A lot of them weren't even good dancing or party songs, just songs people liked. Spotify sounds better. See, the way to do this is go. 1. What song did you dance to at your wedding? 2. What's your favorite romantic song? 3. What's your favorite song to dance to with your partner? And then group it out like that. My sister did the sweetest thing, started with couples married over 30 years and worked their way to wedding dates, to a slow song to waltz to, and played everyone's old wedding songs. Watching people older than my parents hop up and slow dance together grinning like kids was amazing. Watching the groom and his best men ride the bathtub that was used for the beer down a hill and not die. It was a hill for loading boats into a river. It was like a 150-foot ride and they got going scary fast. The bath broke into pieces but all 5 of the men were fine, somehow. I'm guessing some alcohol was involved there. Yeah, they emptied the tub first, lol. I was at a wedding where the family had a tradition that between the wedding and the reception, the couple would take a 15-minute break to share a large bowl of chicken soup. They ate at a table in the middle of the courtyard and no one was allowed to come near. Not only does it prevent the starving bride problem, but it emphasizes that they are accountable only to each other. This We took 20 minutes just the two of us in between the ceremony and reception. The photographer snuck a couple of photos and then left us alone. Those pics are where we look the happiest and most relaxed. There was a couple who had been best friends forever, like many years. They never put the boyfriend-girlfriend label on anything, but they were both in the military, lived together, and were an item long before they introduced each other as girlfriend and boyfriend. By the time they started dating, they only really dated for about a year before they got married, even though they'd effectively been together for over a decade. Their families knew each other. Everyone who knew them knew they were going to eventually get married. It wasn't weird if you knew them. During their wedding, they were brought to the dance floor to play some kind of newlywed game while the DJ, who didn't know them, emceed the event. He asked how long they dated, to which they said just under a year. The DJ goes on this rant about how he can't believe people that only know each other for a short period of time and get married. He unironically asked them if they understood that they were getting married and that he seriously doubted that they'd known each other for long enough to make that kind of commitment. Yikes. Even if they had only been together a year, what kind of moron thinks it's acceptable to say something like that at the wedding? Especially a paid vendor at the wedding. Geez. Just shut up and do your job. At my wedding, the registrar said the best man's name instead of mine during the I do's, and my wife was too busy staring at me to notice. My mate with pure class started to stand up and walk up to take my place. I gave him the evil monkey stare, and the whole room was laughing pretty hard. The registrar's face was bright red and she apologized for it, lol. Wait, I don't usually go to weddings, so how would that happen? You repeat what the registrar says, in small chunks. So the registrar said, I bride take best man to be my lawfully wedded husband, and my bride repeated it. Much to everyone's bemusement, as my best man stood up and made to walk towards my position at the front. He is always up for a laugh and seized the moment. My cousin had her wedding at a zoo because she was a vet tech and her first date was at a zoo as well as her engagement, so it just made sense. I was a bridesmaid, so we got to get especially up close to the animals. The giraffes kept trying to eat the bouquets during the pictures, and they were non-toxic, so it was mostly just funny and cute. At my wedding, the maid of honor gave a 15-minute speech that did nothing but reference her breakup, and then me and my wife's prior relationships in gruesome detail. Longest 15 minutes of my life. We're no longer married. How come? As I came to learn, my ex-wife had a lot of mental health issues she hid from me for years while we dated. When we got married, it all came out. Habitual lying about things that weren't even bad, people talking to her in her head telling her things like I was a horrible person, etc. Roller skate wedding. Bride fell down and opened a gusher on her head. They finished the ceremony and took her to the hospital. She ended up needing emergency surgery to drain fluid buildup in her head and ended up having to relearn how to walk. The adverse effects were from the surgery that saved her life, not the accident itself. Sometimes to save someone, you gotta fuck some shit up. This is a story about my ex-in-law's family. I doubt they are on Reddit, but I would like to share this as it is very touching. I've seen video footage of it as evidence, and it's incredible. The father of the bride is Jack. He was a teacher all of his life and from the stories a very intelligent and interesting man. When I first met him, after the wedding I shall mention, he had full-onset Alzheimer's. He could not communicate, had to be led around with a strap around his waist so he did not run away, and at that first dinner he kept eating the pats of butter with the wrappers on. He needed constant attention and monitoring and was oblivious to the world around him. I'd look him in the eye though and swear there was something going on in there. To the story of his daughter's wedding, this was a couple of years before I met him, but he was then still as unresponsive as I had known him. During the wedding, his daughter had insisted that no matter how she wanted to dance with her dad. She'd chosen an old song that I think he would sing to her as a kid. The song started and she managed to coax him up to his feet and lead him around the dance floor a little, him staggering awkwardly. Then, as everyone watched on, the most incredible thing happened. From nowhere he started to smile. And then he looked at his daughter and started to sing the song. He had been completely mute for years, and here, for this moment, he came back to life. Everyone was crying their eyes out as he swung her around the dance floor, smiling and singing like the dad she had loved from before. The dance ended, and as quickly as his consciousness returned, it left again, and he's not knowingly smiled or spoken since. But for that 2 or 3 minutes, When it mattered most to his daughter on her special day, Daddy came back. Gay male wedding in England. Registrar stands at front of the ceremony before starting the vows and for some inexplicable reason says, "Get your rings ready, boys." Q30 gays bursting out in uncontrollable laughter, and the older family members at the front looking round confused and or disapprovingly. The bride and groom are at the altar, the minister is speaking, saying something to the effect of, "We are here in the presence of friends and family who are all here to give this union their blessing," to which the groom's mother stands up and says, "No, not everyone, I do not give this my blessing." It was both horrible and kind of hilarious. Our minister had to leave the bit out of our wedding about, "Speak now or hold your peace," because my in-laws said they were going to object. They had to make do with being the last ones to stand when I entered the church, ugly crying, glowering, and telling my parents how awful I was after the ceremony was over. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.